Hello children. So our next topic is polymorphism. We have studied about data hiding, we have studied about encapsulation. Now let us study about what we mean by the word polymorphism. So to introduce polymorphism, it is a word which is a combination of two words which means poly and morph. Poly means many, morph means form. So simply saying one name, many forms. So this concept of one name, many forms can be understood in this video throughout. Now, as you can see in the pictorial representation, the polymorphism point of OOPS concept is of two types. One is known as compile time polymorphism. Second is called as runtime polymorphism. Compile time is also called as early binding or static binding. Why is it called as early binding and static binding? I'll tell you at the end of the video. Now, compile time is of two types. One is function overloading and the other is operator overloading. Runtime can be achieved with the help of virtual functions. Now, in this video, we'll see compile time polymorphisms function overloading. What is a function we already know, and in OOPS our classes contains member functions. So we should know the concept of function overloading. So here again, first we introduce polymorphism completely, which says it's a Greek word. Poly means many and morph means forms. This means that we will create a kind of a method, that means a function, which will have the ability to use the same name but will be doing different tasks. Here is a general example that is given. A woman plays a role of a daughter, sister, wife and mother, etc. Similarly goes for every human being. They play many roles. Now, overloading, what do you mean by the word overloading? Overloading means when we give some extra work to a method. Okay? So here overloading means assigning multiple meanings to a function or an operator, because हमने operator overloading देखा था type में, and we had seen function overloading also. So function overloading and operator overloading means one task they are meant to do, but we are giving them more than one task. Multiple tasks are being applied, are being assigned to them. That is why it is called as overloading. So here again, it supports two types of overloading. One is called as function overloading and the other is called as operator overloading. Here we'll see what we mean by the word function overloading and the process of function overloading. Now this is a very simple example to start with what we mean by the word function overloading. If we have a class called as shape, under shape we can have the classes called as rectangle, triangle and circle. And to find out the area of these three different shapes, we require different things, different dimensions. But all of them can have a common name of the function, that is area. Now this area will be a method which will be used for one name, but will be doing the task or finding the area for rectangle also, for triangle also and for circle also. For rectangle I require length and breadth, which will again be the arguments of area. Triangle I require breadth and height. Now these will be the arguments. For circle I require the radius. So this will be the argument of the function area to find out the area of a circle. So here we see that area is one name and it is doing three different tasks to find out the area of a rectangle, for triangle, for circle, and it can find out the area for any other figure also. This means I am overloading the function area. So here what have we done? I have designed a family of function with one function name, but it will be having different argument lists. This is a very important point to be included in functions. Function overloading is having one name but different argument list and types of arguments. Okay. So how does it work? When I call for the function, now children function है तो उसका हम definition देंगे, उसको declare करेंगे 1 point, second point definition, third point will be calling. All three will be different. Only the same thing will be the name of the function, that is area. जब आप area को declare करोगे आपके arguments में two arguments will be there, will be for length and breadth. For rectangle, there will be two different types of arguments, maybe of different data types. For circle, there will be only one argument. So what happens is, when I call the function, the correct function that gets invoked is determined by checking the number and the type of arguments which match the prototype of the function. Very, very important. And this is the working of function overloading. I'll repeat. The correct function that gets invoked is determined by checking the number and the type of arguments that match the declaration, the prototype of the function. Okay? This is the whole rule under which my function overloading works. So this is the same thing that has been theoretically defined here. Process of using same name for two or more functions. Each requires redefinition. For rectangle, for example, my area is length into breadth. I cannot use the same definition for triangle because it is half base into height. Okay? Similarly, I cannot use the same definition for circle because that is pi r square. I have to give the constant pi. So the definition of the function also changes. So we have different types of parameters. The sequence of parameters might be different and the number of parameters also have to be different. The question arises, why are we using overloading is because you need not remember multiple names of the function which is doing the same work. So I give them a common name, give it a common name, but I make them do different tasks. Now this is the syntax of function overloading. So if you notice here, method is the name of the function. First, there are no arguments. Second, there are one argument, data type and one variable. Third may return data type variable 1, data type variable 2. Name of the function is method. Same name. Okay? This is how we can use function overloading. Children, this overloading depends upon the situation, whether you require to use it or you do not require to use it. It is not that class hai to function हमें overload करना ही करना है. No. An example is like that we had given for shape class. So there we would require to overload the functions. It is not every class requires function overloading, and function can also be overloaded outside the class also. In traditional programming also we can overload the functions. Now look at these functions. Int test is the name of the function. with no arguments. Int test int a, one argument, same name. Float test double a, one argument but type is different. Int test int a double b, two arguments with different data types, variable. You could have also had a function which, if I would have written double a int b, even that would have been a different function, because when I pass the values, first value that will be passed will be double and second value passed will be int. So these are different prototypes of four functions. Different arguments are being passed to the different functions. It's just that they have the same name. All of them are doing different tasks, different jobs. And hence I say that these are overloaded. Okay? Children, you have to clear this point in the mind that the function should have the same name. The argument and the types of the argument should be different. The number of arguments should be different. Only then it becomes function overloading. So here notice that the return type of all these four functions are not same. Overloaded functions may or may not have different return type, but it should have different arguments. Only then it is called as function overloading. अब first two functions को देखो, int test, but the arguments are different. पहला function does not have any argument, second function has an argument. That is why it is called as overloaded function. ठीक है? So you can overload the functions by changing the number of arguments. That means एक में दो argument है, दूसरे में तीन argument हो सकती है. Or you can change the number of the type of data type. Int a, double a. ठीक है? So these are also different types of overloading that you can do in functions. Now this is an example, children. Look here. Name of the class is addition. Public में I have two functions, same name, that means sum and sum, overloaded है. Return type दोनों का same है, but they are overloaded. Why? Because the number of arguments are, they have different parameters. Int a, int b, int a, int b, int c. Number of arguments are different. ऊपर दो है, नीचे तीन है. But they have the same name. So hence they are overloaded. This is a function with two parameters. This is a function with three parameters. ठीक है? So when you are calling the function, now look at the calling of the function. Object के साथ जब आप function को call करते हो 1020, तो ये जो 1020 है ये यहाँ आएगा, because दो arguments के साथ match कर रहा है. And जो 1020 30 है, that will come and invoke this function because it matches the prototype, the arguments that have been given, the values that have been passed matches the prototype. Clear? This is how it matches, the calling function matches the prototype, only then it is called, it is invoked. And here see, float as the number of data types same hai, दो हैं, int a, int b, here it is float a, float b. Function parameters have float data type and both have number of parameters same. तो नीचे जब मैं कॉल कर रही हूँ, आप अगर आप देखोगे 10 20 30 40, इसमें जो पैरामीटर्स पास कर रहे हैं, जो वैल्यूज दैट आई एम पासिंग, दे मैच विद द फंक्शन दैट इज डिफाइंड फर्स्ट. इंट के साथ मैच करता है. सो दैट मीन्स फ्लोट ए फ्लोट बी को अभी तक कॉल ही नहीं किया गया है. ओनली द फंक्शन with the parameters int a, int b has been called twice. I am not passing any values which is matching my values, my arguments of float a, float b. Hence at that function is not called. ठीक है? इस बात का ध्यान रखो, when you're calling the function, the values that you are passing, that has to be matching with the value that you have given, the arguments that you have given in the function. Again here, another example, children. Two or more functions that can have same name but different parameters. Int max, int a, int b, float max, float a, float b. Definition same है यहाँ पे, but parameters, arguments have different data types, hence, and the return type is also different, hence the function is overloaded. Another example, display, display, display. This is the name of the function, and the function has the same return type, void, 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 but number of arguments and the type of arguments are different. तो इसलिए ये फंक्शन ओवरलोडेड है. एंड दिस एग्जाम्पल इज विदाउट क्लास. अगर आप देखो इसमें क्लास नहीं है कहीं पे, बट स्टिल आई कैन राइट डाउन दी फंक्शन. ठीक है. अब मेन में a की वैल्यू 5 है और b की वैल्यू 5.5 है. तो व्हेन आई से डिस्प्ले a, विच फंक्शन इज बीइंग कॉल्ड, जहां पे int वैल्यू पास हो रही है. व्हेन आई से डिस्प्ले b, विच फंक्शन इज बीइंग कॉल्ड, जहां पे डबल है. And when I am calling with a and b, then int and double. And children, the sequence also has to be the same. If my first argument is int, my value that I'm passing also should be int. So here in this statement, display a b cannot be display b a. Then the match is not proper. वो mismatch हो जाएगा. अगर यहाँ मैं b लिखूंगी, b cannot give a value to int. ठीक है. So it will be a mismatch. The sequence in which I have given the prototype should be the same sequence in which I am passing the values. So these are the examples of function overloading. Now in the first slide, children, I told you polymorphism is of two types. One is compile time polymorphism and another is runtime polymorphism. तो compile time को static binding और early binding क्यों बोलते हैं? Because the overloaded member functions, in the case if it is written in a class, are selected for invoking by matching the arguments. Now here also we can see they are matching the arguments. ठीक है. Both the type of the argument and the number of the argument. Now this information of the type and the number of arguments is sent to the compiler. पहले ही भेज दिया जाता है रन टाइम से पहले. ठीक है. Is known to the compiler at the time of the compilation. Compilation के बाद running होती है. तो at the time of compilation, the compiler knows that to which function I have to match with what kind of arguments. ठीक है. तो is able to, the compiler is able to select the appropriate function for a particular call at the compile time itself. Compile करते ही it can understand that which function do I need to call. Hence it is called as compile time or early binding. Whereas when we do runtime, वो रन के टाइम उसको रनिंग के व्हेन व्हाइल यू आर एग्जीक्यूटिंग उस टाइम पे उसको पता लगता है कि मुझे कौन सा फंक्शन एग्जीक्यूट करना है, नॉट एट द टाइम ऑफ रन टाइम. हेंस दैट इज कॉल्ड एज लेट बाइंडिंग और डायनामिक बाइंडिंग. So this was about function loading, overloading in polymorphism. We continue the topic next video mein children. We'll do operator overloading again, which is a type of compile time polymorphism only. Thank you children.